top five news stories of the week. Let's talk about there being dissension in the same party. That's right. Senate Republicans are upset. They're actually revolting against the White House. They're rejecting a one-year stopgap funding bill, and they're saying that it's insufficient for the military. Now, remember, Constitution says taxation is supposed to help pay for our military. 15 Senate Republicans are saying that the White House's rules are draconian, and the draconian conditions will hurt the Pentagon, hurt military readiness, and it will also mess up soldiers' pay. So the White House, of course, is blaming Democrats, blah, 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 blah. But there is a bipartisan congressional deal on the table, and they're looking at a 2-year budget, which will carry us through the next election. And this will also prevent a government shutdown, which is on the horizon for this coming September. So if nothing happens, if they can't come to an agreement, $71 billion is going to be shaved from defense spending, and $55 billion is going to be shaved from domestic spending. So we're looking at having, some troubles paying our bills, and if we default, it could actually destabilize the global economy, okay? You want to talk about recession-making moves? Us not paying our bills will be a recession-making move. All right, let's get into the next story and talk about a topic that a lot of people don't want to hear about, and that is climate change. Moody's Analytics say that climate change could cost our country $69 trillion by the year 2100. That's right. So by the end of this century, we're going to have some problems. So Moody's is a major credit rating agency, and so they determine, the health of an economy, the health of municipalities, what happens with workers, and all of that stuff. And they give a grading. They give countries gradings, they give states gradings, they give municipalities gradings, and they either upgrade or downgrade you. Okay, so they're on the lookout. So the Moody's, they just came out with a new report on climate change, and this is one of the first. Okay. And based on this report, it says that if our temperatures go up by an average of 2.7 Fahrenheit degrees, there's going to be almost irreversible harm done to our planet. Moody's is looking at the financial health of companies, municipalities. They're also looking at the harm done to human health and labor productivity, crop yields, and also tourism. So the United States Navy is dredging up their ports to make sure that they're preparing for the rising sea levels. Now, what we have to worry about are going to be water and vector-borne diseases will be the largest direct effects, also malaria and dengue fever. The hardest hit economies are going to be emerging markets, and the hardest hit country is going to be Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is going to be hit the hardest as a result of climate change. Now, I've been wondering, when are the insurance companies going to say enough is enough when it comes to climate change, because they are going to have to pay a pretty penny as well as us. And Chubb, one of the United States' largest insurers, is no longer insuring new policies to coal-fired plants or companies that get more than 30% of their revenues from coals. That's right, coal-related stuff. So coal is out, renewable energy is going to be in. All right, when we come back, we're going to finish up with my top 3 stories, looking at what's going on with minimum wage, Jay-Z, and then Amazon. Why aren't they paying any taxes? Back with Financial Renaissance with the M's, and we're going over my top 5 news stories of the week. First story had to do with the Senate Republicans. They're upset with the White House and the budget that's being proposed. There's a possibility that we may end up having another government shutdown. When we think about what happened during the last government shutdown, it wasn't good for everybody. We had people that worked for the FBI on breadlines, people that couldn't pay their bills. Again, the average American has less than $400 in their bank account right now. Okay, so we don't need another government shutdown. But here's a story that it should kind of bother you, because it bothers me. Again, the theme of today, because we're talking about the economics of the Revolutionary War, taxation without representation. Tell me how this story sits with you. In 2018, Amazon earned $11 billion in profits. That's after they've paid their overhead, after they've paid for all their employees, after they've paid all their benefits. They earned $11 billion in profits and paid $0 in taxes, okay, zero. A report from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, they call it ITEP, said that this is the second year in a row that Amazon is paying 0% in taxes. Now, part of the reason why they got over like a fat rat this year has to do with the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. The Tax Cut and Jobs Act reduced Amazon's federal tax liability from 35% down to 21%. So let's do the math here. So $11.2 billion times 21% comes out to $2.3 billion. What could our government do with $2.3 billion? A whole lot. We'd have better schools, we'd have better infrastructure, and again, I was just complaining about infrastructure, our roads, and we'd have a safety net to take care of the people who couldn't take care of themselves. Some mental health care, some good health care, things like that. Amazon is paying taxes in other countries, but they're not paying taxes here in the great old US of A. So the declining tax revenue by Amazon and a lot of other companies has only widened the deficits, and our national debt has ballooned to over $22 trillion. And for those of you that like to Netflix and chill, Netflix is on this list too for also not paying taxes or having to pay taxes in 2018 because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So as far as Amazon not paying taxes, they get a trash. That makes me upset, especially when the little people, smaller business owners, people like that have to pay taxes. I don't think that's cool. All right, the $15 an hour income wage increase was being touted around our country. Well, there's over 350,000 low-wage workers who are going to lose $1.5 billion this year, because their states, and these are mostly red states, are blocking the wage increases made by local cities and municipalities. So for each low-wage worker, that's going to be about $4,000 each year. And think about $4,000 may not be a lot to you, but for some families, it's the difference between worrying about food, worrying about light bills, worrying about all types of stuff. So 25 states have adopted new laws preventing local municipalities from adopting their own minimum wage laws. They're also blocking employee benefits, sick leave, health care, disability insurance, and retirement benefits. Now, these new laws are affecting women, especially single women, and 60% of minorities. So there's a story about a woman who's 61 years old in St. Louis, Missouri. And she has been making $7 an hour for the last 13 years, okay? She is taking care of her eldest son, who is recovering from a brain tumor, her youngest son, who has autism, and her brother, who is disabled, and herself. And every day she catches 2 buses and a train to work because she cannot afford a car. And again, has been making $7 an hour for the last 13 years. Her city bumped up the minimum wage to $10 an hour. Her company, which is McDonald's, is leaving her at the $10 an hour mark. But she feels that anybody who gets up and goes to work every day should be able to earn a living wage to take care of their families and pay their bills. Douglas, the woman I'm talking about, who's 61, she began working at the age of 12 in her parents' janitorial business. She's not asking for a handout. She just wants her just due. So when we look at the math, with her making $7 an hour, on an annual basis, that comes out to just shy of $15,000. How does a person support 4 people making $15,000 an hour? And even still, we're looking at Missouri going up to that $15 an hour wage, but that's still short of the $16.32 she should be earning on an annual basis. So right now, $16.32 for her would double what she's bringing in and bring her closer to $33,000, which would help her family out immensely. Won't make her rich, it won't even make her middle class, but she'll be above that poverty line. So the states that are not paying into or that are blocking the local municipalities from adopting their own minimum wage laws, guess who? Alabama, Florida, Iowa, Kentucky, and Wisconsin. Those are some of the states. Go ahead and check into, and of course Missouri, check in and make sure that your state isn't one of the ones that is blocking that. And this study was done by the National Employment Law Project, and for the first time it has excuse me, quantify the economic impact of prohibiting local wage increases. This is going to have a resounding impact in our economy, and not cool for those 25 states that think that $7 an hour is cool. I say to those lawmakers, you try to live off $7 an hour. Not happening. Not happening at all. All right. Jigga. What is Jay-Z doing? So Jay-Z is suing a licensing firm for massive fraud. Jay-Z and Roc Nation are suing Iconic Brand Group. Iconic Brand Group, Jay-Z sold Rockaware, the clothing line, to Iconic Brand Group. And Iconic also got a couple of other licensing agreements. They got licensing agreements from Echo, Ed Hardy, and Pony. And they lied about their financials. And what they did was they took off with the money, and they never provided any services. So you haven't seen a Rockaware ad, you haven't seen a lot of Pony stuff. Ed Hardy is all but gone. And Echo, I haven't seen Echo clothing on anybody recently. So Iconic, they absconded with all the licenses. So they got these licensing agreements, and then they took off. The Rock sold their men's clothing line, Rockaware, to Iconics for $204 million in 2007. And the company stocks were doing really good in 2015, but today Iconic stocks are worth less than $1 per share. Now, reason why this is important is because Jay-Z is upset, because he was forced to testify in front of the Securities and Exchange Commission. He got subpoenaed, and there were a whole other bunch of unspecified damages that he had occurred because of this. So Iconic was sued over the Rockaware, the rights to use Rockaware and Roc Nation Apparel Group. The names are similar, but they signed a deal for Rockaware, but because Roc Nation signed a deal with New Era for some hats, Iconics got upset. So Iconics is trying to say that Rockaware and Roc Nation are the same, and Jay-Z is like, nah, that it's not the same. The company's claims, and basically they're attempting to rewrite carefully negotiated agreements. So they're not going for it. The attorney of Jay-Z, Alex Spiro, who also, if you Google him, you'll know that he helped out in some other stuff. He's claiming that Jay-Z is being dragged into this case just because he's a celebrity, and that it should be better demonstrated that companies, when you are reading your contracts, if you are doing an agreement with one company, make sure that you understand the name of that company and that you don't try to change things down the road. Now, one thing that Jay-Z did that really, really has me excited is that during these lawsuits, and this happened a couple of years ago, Jay-Z halted the lawsuit by pointing out that there was a lack of black arbitrators. So when you're involved in a lawsuit, sometimes it's better to kind of go to the mediation table. It's a lot cheaper than going to court and having a jury determine whether or not this group should win money over that group. And a lot of times, a jury of your peers isn't necessarily a jury of your peers, especially when we're talking about economics and wealth. So what Jay-Z did was they were supposed to have an arbitrator. They were supposed to pick 4 arbitrators, but Jay-Z pointed out that out of the arbitrators that were given to them, they were supposed to go through a list of 12. They were supposed to choose 4 on each side. And what Jay-Z saw was that out of all the arbitrators, he couldn't find a single African-American arbitrator that did either a large case or a complex case on the roster. And additionally, he took that observation that basically out of all the arbitrators, he wouldn't be represented. He wouldn't be represented properly, because if you don't have people of your same color, your same wealth, how are they going to be able to fairly make a decision about you? So he said that there was an unbias of white arbitrators towards black defendants, and that if it was unresolved, the issue would deprive black litigants like Jay-Z and his companies of equal protection of the laws. The court ended up upholding his petition, and the arbitration was paused until they were able to get the proper arbitrators in the case. So, see, this right here is something that should be front page news. And if you have a court case dealing with your business, you have the right to have your lawyer look at this case and use this case as a basis for making sure that if there's somebody that's going to be deciding or making a decision on your case, that they either A, look like you, or they come from the same background as you. So you don't want somebody that is lower class or middle class or, under the poverty level making a decision about your business, because for certain people, they're going to look at you and your wealth or what you've accumulated from all of your hard years of working, and they're going to say that, it's enough. You should be satisfied with what you have. And that's the wrong way of looking at it. It's not a you should be satisfied with what you have. It should be, is under the rule of the law, should I win this case based on a person doing something wrong, or should I lose the case because I haven't proved my facts? It shouldn't be based on race, and it shouldn't be based on, you thinking that we have enough based on the color of our skin. So kudos to Jay-Z for actually putting a kibosh on that. He's also suing Iconic for all of his legal fees having to do with being dragged in front of the Securities and Exchange Commission. It also kind of defamed his name, tarnished his brand a little bit, so it's going to be interesting to continue to watch how this case plays out in the courtrooms. That's how we do stuff these days. We fight in court, not in the streets. When we come back in 300 seconds, my Emma Knows Money, and I'm going to be telling you and your college-bound student how to emotionally prepare yourselves to let go.